It's Thursday and you know what it means.
Control rig.
This is a big subject, so I will need all your attention. And this is why I'm gonna split it into 2 videos. So you better stay focused for each Thursday of the week.
So, subscribe.
For this tutorial, I'm honored to present you Mr. Dewies. He will help us build and understand all aspects of the control rig. It's a simple biped rig I made on Blender with several morph targets to facilitate facial animation. You need of course to create a control rig asset first. Open your content browser and click on your skeletal mesh. Right click, create control rig. Open it and let's see what's inside. As you can see, we have several tabs and we are going to focus on 4 of them. The viewports, all the tabs below, the graph, and the details area on the right hand side. As we're going to use a lot our viewports and our graph, we are going to customize a bit our UI. Select the tab of the viewports and drag it next to the graph tab. Now, let me explain in details what these are all about. The viewport will be the area where we will visually build our controls and their attributes. The graph is where we build all the code logic of our rig. The left panel regroups 4 tabs by default. The rig hierarchy tab, where we have the tree structure of our bones character. This is where we're going to build the tree structures of our controls as well. The execution stack will regroup all nodes you used in the code construction in your rig graph, called forward solve graph for the moment. Curve container regroups all your morph targets. And finally, my blueprint parts, where you are going to see and manage the events, functions, and variables you could create. And on the right hand side, you have all the details panel that will be in great use for our control, when we'll move and change shape of it. If we focus on the graph in the first place, you see that by default, we have one event called forward solve. In total, for a complete control rig, you will need 3 main events. This one, a backward solve, and a construction event. Forward solve allows you to animate from controls to drive bones. Backward solve allows to drive controls with bones. Classical example, you're working on a mocap asset and you want to recover the control after a bake. If you intend to bake your animation in sequencer afterwards, you need to configure your backward solve. The construction event is where you define the logic, variables and so on, just once, so that you can reuse them anywhere else in your graph. We'll be covering these 3 events in details. For the moment, let's keep our forward solve event. As you know, in animation, we have 2 main types of control, FK and IK. The 2 stands for forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. We'll start with forward kinematic and then build our IK system. We are going to concentrate on the viewports so that we can build our FK controls visually. Let's dive in. Controls are mainly based on the position of your bones, so you need to see them. To do so, go to Character, Bones, and click on All Hierarchy. Mr. Dewies is small, so let's reduce their size to something like 0.1. Little tips for you guys: if you want to quickly switch between visibility mode, you can go back to Character, Bone, and then Shift plus click on All Hierarchy. Do the same for Selected only, and as you can see now, you have 2 widgets at the top left of your viewport, making the process easier. Keep in mind to always respect the tree structure of your bone hierarchy, as well as the naming conventions. The key to control rig is to be rigorous and patient. You can easily accumulate error. Let's create our first control. The first way to create one is to right-click on the bone you want to control. Here we will start with the first one called wood bone. Go to New and select New Control. Once it has been created, we can now manipulate it and modify its shape. From the outset, we need to distinguish between manipulating the control itself and manipulating its shape. Here, for example, we will first modify its shape. Take a look at its detail panel on the right-hand side and look for the shape heading. Let's start by changing its current shape. As you can see, you have a lot of choice. You could also import your own shapes if you wanted to. For now, let's pick the rounded triangle thick. Just below you see the shape transform. First thing is to reduce its scale to something like 0.06 and rotate on X to something like 90. Let's also change its color with white. Congratulations! You made your first control. Before going any further, here you need to pay extreme caution. By default in the viewport, if you select your control and drag it around, it will change the current transform that you find under the Transform tab here. Think of it as testing your control rig. This is temporary, and as soon as you compile, it will return to its first position. This is where you create an actual offset from its original position and also change the origin of your control. This is completely different from the shape transform. If you want to orientate the shape of your control, for example, make sure you use the shape transform and not just the transform. Little tip here, if you wish, you can switch between the transform mode and the shape transform mode using Ctrl plus period. If it doesn't work for you, you can configure it via shortcuts when you go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and Keyboard Shortcuts. Look for Toggle Shape, Transform, Edit. If you select Ctrl and press Ctrl plus period, this message warns you that you are in the process of modifying the shape transform. Deselect or Ctrl plus period again to exit shape transform. Our first control is on spots. We have now to pay attention to where it is placed in our tree structure. As you can see, when you create a control directly from a bone, it will automatically be parented. And we don't want that. It is highly recommended to build an individual hierarchy for our control. And we must also respect the same order as our bones hierarchy. This is very important. So select your control, right-click and unparent, or Shift plus P. Now, it no longer has a parent. When building control rig, you need to be rigorous from the beginning. So we're going to create a null and place our root control in it. A null is an empty actor that will help us in many ways. In this case, to group and organize our control. To create one, right-click in an empty space in the rig hierarchy and select New Null. Name it AFK Controls and drag and drop the root control in it. I'm now going to continue following the bone hierarchy and repeat the same operation to create controls up to my L_N002 bone. We won't be doing control for the _N bones, as these are extras created when I imported Mr. Dewies from Unreal. Select Spine 001, right-click, New Control. Shift plus P to unparent. Configure the shape of the control via Shape Transform or using Ctrl plus period. Here I choose a rounded square _thin with a blue color. I choose and save my color by dragging it to the top so that I can reuse it later, and place it in Roots _control in order to respect the tree structure. Same for Spine 002, right-click, New Control, and parent and place it in Spine 001 _control. Always respect the structure. This time I go with a circle thin. Same color as before. Here we are working on one side of our mesh, the left arm. I revert the order. Usually we play the left and right from the character's point of view, but here I'm placing myself as in the front view. so the left side will also be our left side. Starting with L_clavicle 001, I right-click, select New Control, and here I will try to find a way to be creative and find some shape that will not overlap too much with multiple controls. Always unparent and place it following the previous control, always by respecting all the bones hierarchy. I choose quarter circle thick, rotate it at 90 degrees on y-axis and scale it uniformly. I've also chosen a new color for this side. Let's create control for L_clavicle 002, select the bone, right-click New Control, unparent it and place it following correct hierarchy as before. This time I go for a half circle and let's reshape it. I continue with L_arm 001 bone to L_hand 001, this time with circle thick control. For the final bone of this side, I select a rounded triangle thick. I also reshape it and rescale it. Since the beginning of the control construction, we've only used shape transform. Don't forget it. Okay, now we set up the first part of our control hierarchy and one of the sides of the arm. When you get to this point, you don't want to redo the same operation as before, one by one. This is where the mirror function comes in handy. We are going to select L_clavicle 001. I know, I made a little mistake, it says clavicle. To L_hand 002 control. Right-click on them and select Mirror. Here, leave X-axis for mirror and choose None for axis to flip. We're looking for all the L_ to replace with R_. Click on OK. And here we have done the first part of the control mirroring. Be careful, if you stop here, it won't work afterwards. So the next step here is to make sure our control's transform is matching with the transform of the corresponding bone. We are no longer talking about shape transform here. Select the bone, our clavicle 001, right-click and select Control Bone Transform. See the orientations of the axis. Now select the control in the viewport and immediately you see the transform gizmo is not in the same direction. We absolutely need to correct this. To do so, right-click again on the bone under R_clavicle 001, this time select Copy, select now the R_clavicle 001 control, right-click and choose Paste Global Transform. Now both transforms are corresponding, but we are not out of the woods yet. We just made a temporary manipulation of our control's transform. We need to validate it. Right-click again on the control and select Set Offset Transform from Current. It will now kind of bake the new position and orientation of the control. If you look in the Control Details panel and focus on Transform, you'll see 5 tabs, between which you can toggle and even shift-click to toggle between several. Initial is the initial transform for the reference pose, meaning it is based regarding the bone. Current is the actual temporary transform you make, like when you test your rig by dragging control. Offset is kind of the baked position of control. This is what we just made with the Set Offset Transform from Current. By doing so, we told Unreal to keep this control where it is at its default position. Min and max will be used to determine value when, for example, we put in place our FK and IK switch using float. Let's finish this mirrored side and continue. Now you know the workflow, so we can continue and finish our FK controls, following our bones hierarchy. Great! We made all our FK controls. Now we have to make sure all names and hierarchy are respected. This is very important. Now let's jump in coding all the logic of our control in the graph. Basic logic is simple. We are going to start with our root bone. Select it and drag and drop it into your graph. Select Set Bone. Do the same operation with the roots control and this time select Get Control. You have here to simply connect the transform output of the control to the value input to the set bone transform. Then execute by connecting the forward solve event to the set transform bone. Compile and save. Go back to the viewport, select the root control in your viewport and drag it. Now our control is connecting to the correct bone. Press Ctrl plus G in order to reset the initial position of the control, or hit Ctrl plus Z if you want. Back to our graph, now we could redo this exact same operation for each bone and control, and just connect them one after the other. For example, let's continue with spine 001, connect everything, and let's go back to our viewport and check if everything's fine. This is some nice stretching from our little Mr. Dewies. You could continue to do so, add a sequence node for example to organize and avoid one long line cutting and continue to do so. But now, this is where construction events show all its potential. Because even if you could do these steps one by one, it's better to avoid repeating, for this example, 29 times this operation. Otherwise, of course, it will be boring. We are now going to define specific arrays and variables to let Unreal look for bones and control with one logic system. Right-click in your graph and pick Construction Events. Now what you need to do here is to get all controls and bones in one node for each. This is where Array comes in. Select all your bones starting from root bone, exclude all the underscore end bones. Drag the selection in your graph and choose Create Item Array. Collapse the node here, and now we have all our bones in one place. Do the same with controls, excluding just the null. Drag the selection as well and choose Create Item Array. This is where you need to be careful once again. You absolutely must ensure that the two arrays have the same numbers of arrays and the same order. That's why we've excluded the underscore end bones, for example. If you have any problems when you connect everything to Cursor afterwards, 99% of this is due to the lack of corresponding arrays between the bones and the controls. Now go to my Blueprint tab and add one variable that we call bones. For the type of variable, select Rig Element Key. Then right-click on the icon of the variable to change it onto an array. Or you can select it on its detail panel on the right-hand side. Do the same with a new variable called FK Controls. Drag them both in set mode. Connect them with your construction event node, same for the arrays. Bones with bones and controls with controls. Let's define the logic of the simplification here. Add a for each node, get the bone variable by dragging and selecting Get Bones, connect it to the array inputs of the for each node, Drag the output execution from this one and add a set transform node. Connect element with item. Now drag from the index here and look at for at node from array class. Get the fk variable and plug it to it. Also in get mode. Drag the element from the add node and look for get transform. Now connect its transform output to the value of the set transform bound. Connect to the forward solve event node. And let's see what happens here with Mr. Dewies. And here you see with the simplification we have connected everything and every bounds and controls are on spot. Now Mr. Dewies can dance and move around with no problems with a full FK control system. We establishes all the first step in this tutorial from the basic of controlrig to create full FK controls. In the next tutorial, we will set up IK controls with switch, IAM function and backwards solve event. That is for today, guys. Thanks for watching this first part and we will see each other next week or in 15 days depending on the free of the months.
See you next week and subscribe.